Constantine Brancusi was a sculptor who was born on February 19th, 1876. He died on March 16th, 1957 in Paris, France. He was born in Hobito, Romania, and attended the École des Beaux-Arts in France. When he was 18, he created a violin by hand with materials he found all around his workplace.
Brancusi wanted to convey the essential nature of a bird, elegantly soaring upward in flight, without the need for traditional representational forms. Brancusi would cook his own food, traditional Romanian dishes. Brancusi held a large spectrum of interests, from science to music. He was a good violinist, and he would sing old Romanian folk songs, often expressing by them his feelings of homesicknesses. His circle of friends included artists and intellectuals in Paris, such as Amedeo Modigliani, Pablo Picasso, Man Ray, and among others. He was an old friend of Romani Marie, who was also Romanian, and referred Isamu Noguchi to her cafe in Greenwich Village. Although surrounded by the Parisian avant-garde, Brancusi never lost the contact with Romanian and had friends from the community of Romanian artists and intellectuals living in Paris. Brancusi held a particular interest in mythology, especially Romanian mythology, folktales, and traditional art. But he became interested in African and Mediterranean art as well. As talented handyman, he built his own phonograph and made most of his furniture, utensils, and doorways. He was a saint-like idealist and near ascetic, turning his workshop into a place where visitors noted the deep spiritual atmosphere. However, particularly through the 10s and 20s, he was known as a pleasure seeker and merrymaker in his unconventional circle. He enjoyed cigarettes, good wine, and the company of women. He had one child, Johnny Moore, whom he never acknowledged.
He also made some other pieces of art, and most of his art was abstract. He quoted, "What my work is aiming at, above all, realism. I pursue the inner hidden reality, the very essence of objects in their own intrinsic fundamental at nature. This is my only deep preoccupation." Some examples of other of his work are The Kiss, which shows emotive realism, and it highlights forms and spirituality of African, Assyrian, and Egyptian art. Another one is The Sleeping Muse, which has smoothness achieved by polishing the surface of the sculpture until it achieved a high gleam. Another one is Fish, which shows the speed, its floating, flashing body seen through the water, just the flash of its spirit, of the fish. Okay, and The Sorceress, which was carved from a portion of a tree trunk where three branches met, and it was inspired by a flying witch.
Since Bird in Space did not look much like a bird at all, officials classified it as a utilitarian object. It was filed under kitchen utensils and hospital supplies, and they levied against it 40% of its original value.
I'll be talking about the controversy of both sides. In 1926 through 27, Bird in Space was the subject of a court battle over its taxation by U.S. Customs. In October of 1926, Bird in Space arrived in New York Harbor aboard the steamship Paris. While works of arts are not subject to custom duties, the custom officials refused to believe that the tall, thin piece of polished bronze was art and also imposed the charge for manufacturing metal objects. 40% of the sale price, or about $230. Marcel Duchamp, who accompanied the sculpture from Europe, photographer Edward Steichen, who was to take possession of Bird in Space after exhibition, and Brancusi himself were indigent. The sculptures were sent to appear at the Bremer Gallery in New York City and then the Arts Club in Chicago. Under pressure from the press and artists, U.S. Customs agreed to rethink their classification of the item, releasing the sculpture on bond until a decision could be reached. However, Customs appraised F.J.H. Craig eventually confirmed the initial classification of items and said that they were subject to duty. Craig told the New York Evening Post that several men high in the art world were asked to express their opinions for the government. One of them told us, "If that's art, hereafter I am a bricklayer." Another said, "Dots and dashes are artistic as Brancusi's work." In general, it was their option that Brancusi left too much to the imagination. The next month, Steichen filed an appeal to the U.S. Customs decisions. Under the Act 1922 Tariff Act, for the sculpture to count as duty free, it must be an original work of art with no particular purpose made by professional sculptor. No one argued that the piece had a particular purpose, but whether or not the sculpture was art was wholly content. Brancusi affidavit to the American consul explained the process of creating the piece, establishing its originality. All this I did myself, by hand. This artistic finish takes a very long time and is equivalent to beginning the whole work over again. I did not allow anybody else to do any of the finishing work, as the object of the bronze was my own special creation, and nobody but myself could have carried it out to my satisfaction. Claim the beautiful glossy finish could be done by an artist's hand, therefore makes it an art piece.
In the end, they persuaded the judge to not tax the statue. However, this was a win only to the individual, not a win to modern art. They won only because the bird was to the judge's liking.